So before we begin, this is a Hungry Ghost Halloween special. Spooky stories from the suttas. And a content warning. This session has mature themes, including death. There's some graphic violence. There's some blood and gore. There's body fluids, cannibalism, and coprophagia. So for those who don't know what coprophagia is, you are in for a treat. And our first story of the night is going to be the story of a large group of ghosts. So I'll stop my screen sharing for you. And here we are at Lokantavihara, the monastery at the end of the world, at the cemetery at the end of the world, reading ghost stories. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today on the land of the Paramatical people of the Darug Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and future, and also extend that respect to all First Nations people everywhere. And so here we are, telling stories of ghosts. First one for you today is about a large group of ghosts seen by the Arahant Moggallana. Moggallana Bhante says, "You are naked, very thin, ugly. Your rib bones are pressing against your skin. Who are you?" And the ghost says, "Bhante, we are ghosts. When we were in the human world, we did evil deeds. After death, we're reborn in this ghost world, and now we suffer very much." And Moggallana says, "What evil did you do by body, speech, or mind to have you come to this ghost world?" And the ghosts say, "There were many virtuous people and opportunities for collecting merit, but we did not give anything. Now we've been roaming for half a month, suffering from thirst. When we feel very thirsty, we go to the river to drink, but when we get close to it, the water appears as if it has all dried up, and all that is left is sand. When we are scorched by the sun, we go to the shade of a tree. Once we get there, the shade disappears and the sun beats down. A wind like fire blows and burns us, but we deserve this because we have done lots of evil deeds in our previous life. We are overcome by hunger. We travel many miles searching for food, but we cannot find any. We faint and fall on the ground on our backs. Other times we fall face down. We hit our heads and chests with frustration. Alas, this is our lack of merit. But we deserve this and other more terrible results. When we were rich, we did not give anything to others. We did not collect any merit. Once we escape from this ghost world, and are reborn in the human world, we hope that we will be generous and virtuous. We must do many wholesome deeds. So, this is our first story. I don't think I can commit to this torchlight all night. I'm just going to put this light on. Ah! And now I can see you. Hopefully you can see me. And welcome. Thank you for joining this Halloween special. So for those who don't know me, I'm Bhante Akaliko, and I'm sweating a little bit because I've put too many candles on. And some of you might remember this cardboard cemetery that I did at the beginning of the pandemic a long time ago to do a death contemplation that was going to be at Rookwood Cemetery, but got cancelled because of COVID. And turns out that a cardboard cemetery comes in handy from time to time. So tonight we're thinking about death, we're thinking about rebirth, and we're going to explore the world of the Peta Vatthu, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a little while. And so we're going to be having a little bit of fun, but maybe not too much fun, because Buddhist monks, as you know, we can't have too much fun. But we can talk about Dhamma, and we can use this opportunity this Halloween to think about some Dhamma and to learn a little bit about this concept of the hungry ghosts, learn a little bit more about what causes people to be reborn as a hungry ghost, and most importantly, what can we do to avoid becoming a hungry ghost? So I'm going to be doing some screen sharing. If for some reason the screen share doesn't work, which is a common thing, please let me know just by someone unmuting and telling me. And so to understand the place of the hungry ghosts in Buddhist cosmology, we need to understand a little bit about the whole big picture of cosmology. So in Buddhism, there's 31 planes of existence with three main realms. There's the arupa loka, the immaterial or formless realm, no hungry ghosts there. There's the rupa loka, the fine material realms. And there's the karma loka, the sense sphere realms. So karma loka is quite a large realm. It has lots of different beings, all with different karma that are reborn in different places. This is some illustrations of the very complex worlds that people and beings can be reborn into. And at the top on the left, you can see there's many, many very high realms, which perhaps we might have some aspirations for. And then in the middle, there's some of the karma loka, some of these sensual realms. And you see that down here, we have the Peta loka, the realm of the hungry ghosts. And there's also these hell realms, hot and cold hell realms. And you might often see these Tibetan wheels of samsara, where the hungry ghosts and all the other realms are depicted. And here is the hungry ghost. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in, but it's just good to know that they're there, and they're a feature of all different Buddhist traditions. And actually, the Mahayana tradition has a separate body of stories, and some overlap with the Peta Vatthu. And there's also another collection, just while I'm talking about it, in the Samyutta Nikaya of ghost stories as well. And so you see here the realms of sensual pleasure. We have the Deva realms, we have the human realm, and then there's the realms of the demons, of the asuras, the hungry ghosts, the animals, and the hell realms. I'll just quickly go through this. So remember that we are part of this sensual realm, as are devas, and it also includes these states of deprivations or apaya. So the different types of deprivation states are the asuras, who are always fighting, so they can never get any comfort or peace. And then there's our subject of concern today, the petas, the hungry ghosts, and they wander unhappily in search of sensual pleasure. And then there's the animal realm, where beings are hunted, scared, and it's very difficult to make good karma. And then there's the hell realms, 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, and the beings there are suffering as well. But there's a difference between the suffering of beings in the hell realms. Hell realms are similar in some ways to the kind of tortures that occur to the ghosts, much worse in many cases. And the difference is, the main difference is, although both are temporary states, they're not permanent, they're not eternal, and both are full of misery and suffering, the petas wander about the world and they're not confined to a place like a hell. So they're able to wander around and they mix with us here in the human realm, but they can't be seen. So a good example of torture and suffering from the ghost realm, similar to the suffering that we find in the hell realms, is the next story. So tonight I'm going to be moving in and out of telling stories, moving in and out of screen sharing. And so the next one we have is about the results of violence. And again, it's we're going to have the Arahant Moggallana. And I can just hear that there's someone maybe making some noise, maybe eating some dinner. So maybe just double check if your microphone is off so we don't disturb the others. So if for some reason Moggallana has a really important place in the stories of the Peta Vatthu, and also especially in the Samyutta Nikaya, where he is the main figure. And it's usually he who gets to see these ghosts, perhaps because of some psychic powers that he has or some special ability. And so the Arahant Moggallana occurs frequently in the Peta Vatthu as well. And so here we have the story called 60,000 Hammers. And Moggallana Arahant says, "Why do you look like a crazy person? Why are you running around like a scared animal? You must have done lots of evil deeds in the past. Why do you make that screeching noise so they can be heard as well? Like all ghosts moaning and crying out, wailing." And the ghost says, "Bhante, I am a ghost. As a result of my evil deeds, I'm experiencing much suffering. From all directions, 60,000 hammers fly towards me and split my head." And Bhante Moggallana says, "What kind of evil deed did you do by body, speech, or mind to have 60,000 hammers fly towards you from all directions and split your head?" And the ghost says, "When I was in the human world, I saw a Pacceka Buddha." So Pacceka Buddha is like a private Buddha, a Buddha that doesn't teach, who lives alone. A Pacceka Buddha named Suneta. That fearless Pacceka Buddha was meditating under a tree. I punched him with my fist and split his head. It is a result of this deed that I have to suffer like this. From all directions, 60,000 hammers fly towards me and split my head." And the Arahant Moggallana says, not with much sympathy, "You deserve to have 60,000 hammers fly towards you from all directions and split your head. Evildoer, this is happening according to your evil deed. And so here we have, I guess already we've learned a little bit about the format and the structure of these ghost stories. We've seen perhaps that the results of people's actions, karma, their intentional actions, their karma results in particular states, particular punishments, which we will find out more about as we go along this journey through the Peta Vatthu. And so we've learnt already that our actions have consequences. And we're going to need to understand what kind of actions might lead to bad results. And we need to understand what kind of actions will lead us away from these kinds of results. And so these are the purpose of these kinds of stories. They're very instructive. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later as we continue our journey through the Peta Vatthu. And so a little bit about these beings. We heard a little bit in the first story, and we'll see that there's quite a variety of petas or pretas in the Sanskrit. So all of these beings are suffering the results of bad actions, like body, speech, and mind. They live in the human realm. Some actually fly through space, and apparently the ones that fly through space are always being cruel and they're scared, so they act out and they hurt others because they're scared as they fly through space. So they're usually invisible. It takes a certain person with certain qualities, such as the Arahant Moggallana or the Buddha, to see these beings. Maybe some of us, perhaps from time to time, might have a mind state that might allow us to see them. Their bodies are metaphors for misdeeds. And we'll see some of their bodies shortly, but we heard in the first story how their bodies are thin, their bones are sticking out, but they're hungry. They usually have big bellies, but small mouths. They can't feed themselves properly. And they're ugly, they're smelly, and they're gaunt. And as we just saw from the hammers, they're tormented in ways that mirror their misdeeds. So it's kind of a very simplistic kind of karma that we see in the Peta Vatthu. We see people doing actions and then experiencing the results directly from those actions. And they frequent graveyards, wastelands, looking for food. So this idea of hunger is integral to the stories of the Petas. It's similar perhaps to the zombies from Western culture. And there's an underlying greed that happens with the zombies. You see, they become hungry for brains and they lose all of their human qualities. And they're just this base hunger looking to be satisfied. And like zombies and Petas, they're never truly satisfied. They're always hungry for more. And so this, of course, is a metaphor, something for us to consider, our greed for sensual pleasures, craving as a form and a cause of suffering. And as I mentioned, some of them are flying through the air, they're scared. Some of them are hunted as they fly through the air. And they're also affected by cold and heat. And often their hunger is said to burn so much that it's like smoke coming out of their mouth. These are the Petas. There's some illustrations I've got from here. Art from Buddhist cultures is a wonderful resource of these incredible drawings and paintings depicting these beings. And I have to say, it's something that I was really attracted to when I first found them, because so much of Buddhist art is so, lotuses and smiling beings. And there's not always this kind of dark side of life, the uncanny or the chthonic, these kind of earthly, very, very, very primitive, base kind of things. We don't see this a lot in Buddhist art. We see all the good stuff, all the inspiring stuff. But there's this other side to human nature and this other side to the nature of beings. And so when I first saw them, I remember thinking that they were really powerful. And I've also led, some of you were present for a Halloween special I did a few years ago, where we drew our own Petas, our own hungry ghosts. And that was lots of fun. So here we see a being desperate for food, his hunger burning so much that smoke and flames erupt from his mouth. And you see that big belly that's quite common in the depictions of hungry ghosts. Again, these hungry, hungry, hungry ghosts. These are some Japanese examples from, I think the artist is Hokusai, a famous printmaker from Japan. And he made a wonderful collection of really quite twisted ghosts with a slightly manic sense of humor to them. And here's some contemporary examples, which I really liked. And here we have a good example of the beings living in a wasteland. What are they eating, you might ask? Something has fallen on the ground. Yes, the hungry ghosts are eating feces. So this is coprophagia, that word I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, eating poo. And here we have another Japanese artwork. It's actually a scroll of the hungry ghosts. It's a very long scroll, lots of great imagery in the scroll. And here we have a hungry ghost waiting for its meal. Another one standing on, looking on, perhaps a bit jealous. And over here also the same thing. And then there's another set down here who are kind of left outside. And this one perhaps is waiting for his friend to make an evacuation so that he may eat. And this is something we hear about in these stories. And so let me read another story that relates to this imagery. So hopefully none of you have just had your dinner and you're feeling okay, I hope. So this one is called the excrement eating ghost. And this is what happens if you associate with bad monks and insult good monks. So watch out. Hopefully I'm a good monk. Oh, this is once again, this is Bhante Moggallana. And he's talking to this ghost that he's seeing. Oh, unlucky one, you're standing in a pit of excrement. Who are you? What kind of evil deed did you do? How can I know for sure what happened to you? And the ghost says, Bhante, I am a ghost. As a result of my evil deeds, I have been born into this ghost world. I suffer very much. And Bhante Moggallana says, what kind of evil deed did you do by body, speech, or mind to suffer like this? The ghost says, when I was in the human world, I let a monk stay in my house. The monk was very greedy and jealous of his supporters. He insulted good monks. I listened to that evil monk's words. Following him, I too insulted good monks. That is the evil deed I did, from which I was born into this ghost world. And Bhante Moggallana says, you associated with that evil monk thinking he was a good friend. What happened to that monk after death? And the ghost says, Bhante, that evil monk has also been born in the ghost world. He is suffering in the same pit of excrement as I. I am standing on his head. He lives as a servant to me here. I have to eat other people's excrement, and he has to eat mine. Oh. So this is the distressing world of these hungry ghosts. And so I like these stories because they are so powerful. Yeah, they really, yes, thank you, Alex, for that reference. It is the human centipede, which for those who don't know it, lucky you. For those who do, it's a cultural reference about this sort of thing. Yes, perhaps inspiration, who knows? And so, yeah, so these stories, they don't mince words, do they? They really they hit you at that level of disgust. And I think it's that kind of repulsion and revulsion, which that kind of visceral, embodied, gross kind of feeling or gross kind of thought that is designed to really hit home about the kind of conduct we have in our lives, kind of like very much about punishment, isn't it? So you can see that there's a relation here to maybe ethics and social mores, and I'll explore this as we keep going. And I want to just share my screen again to get to a few other thoughts about these hungry ghosts. So that's one we already heard. So more generally now, I want to introduce the ideas that you find in the Peta Vatthu. So this is the chapter which we find in the Sutta Pitaka of the canon, and it's in the Khuddaka Nikaya. So there's 51 verse narratives just like this that you've already heard. And these are always conversations between ghosts and the Buddha or his disciples. So scholars have said that this is a late text, and they've said perhaps it's maybe 200 or 300 years after the Buddha. And a lot of the content that we find is it's often very simplistic, and it's involving these historical figures such as Bhante Moggallana in ways which tell us that they're kind of telling stories rather than repeating facts. And so there's a slight difference between the older layer of doctrinal texts that we know. And again, this is all about karma. So we're looking at these bad acts. We're forced to think about them. But in addition to the discussion of the conduct that we have to avoid, there's other verses, other stories which explicitly point out the importance of merit. And so it seems at this time, when these stories were recorded, merit had taken on perhaps a much larger significance in the Buddhist cultural sphere than it might have had in the early suttas. And even later, even up to today, actually, the practice of merit making became a really large part of Buddhist culture. And I'll look more about that a bit later on. As I said, karma is explained in very simplistic terms, and we'll see a bit more of that. And I just want to point out that these are morality tales. They're kind of, they function as a certain, they have a certain function. And when I think about the audience for these things, like I think about, as we are doing here, telling these stories, or as myths and fables have always functioned as a way to explain something that can help us understand what to do and what not to do, that helps us socially, not just individually, but that is a part of our culture, our larger culture. So at this time, it seems a lot of these stories really emphasize merit making as being something that is done towards the Sangha especially. So the Sangha, of course, the Arya Sangha is a field of merit. And so it seems perhaps somewhat self-serving at times to insist, monks kind of insisting, give us things, donate to us. Otherwise, you might be reborn as a hungry ghost. But there is also stories of monks who are bad being punished, and also lay folks being punished for various things too. And we also do see, as we'll see a bit later on, perhaps if we have time, that monks do a lot of merit making themselves. And it's not something that is restricted only to lay people. And we also see that lay people also have the ability to see hungry ghosts, and that they encourage virtue and they encourage generosity and merit making too. So we've already seen a little bit of the narrative framework that these stories have. So they do have a framework. And I think it's important to point out that these are stories and they follow particular sequences of events. And so it starts off with a person seeing a ghost, and it's usually a monk, but not always. It's usually a monk, but sometimes it's a lay person. And the reason this might be important is because we need certain qualities to be able to see these hungry ghosts. We need the Dharma eye. We need to be able to see these beings which are usually hidden in our usual life. And so perhaps it's more likely to be beings who have developed their meditation and their psychic powers, and those are most likely to be monks and nuns who have the time to practice in that way. Always the person who meets the ghosts describes them for us so that we get to see them too. So their job is to introduce the ghost that they see and describe the state of woe. And they ask, what did you do to be reborn like this? And then the ghost usually says, I am a ghost. So they kind of introduce themselves as a ghost. They're kind of perhaps reinforcing this idea, reinforcing the narrative, and they tell their story of woe. So we can't be unsure. We know they're a ghost. They tell us they're a ghost, and they tell us their story of woe and what they did. And they usually give a warning to us about the actions that they did. And they suggest that we make merit instead. And also frequently they plead for assistance. They plead for compassion. They ask for food, they ask for water, they ask for clothes and things like that. And through the act of dedicating merit, it seems that when they are treated kindly and they have things offered to them, it somehow benefits them and their conditions improve. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, but now we have another story. And this is the cannibalism. I wasn't sure if it was human cannibalism or ghost cannibalism, maybe it's something for us to ponder. So here it is. This is the eater of 5 sons. Upon seeing a ghost, a monk asks, "You are naked and very ugly. Your body is very smelly. You're surrounded by flies. You standing there, who are you?" And the ghost says, "I am a ghost. I am suffering in the world of Yama," that's the god of death. "I have done an evil deed as a human and have been reborn into the world of ghosts. Every morning, I give birth to 5 sons, and in the evening, another 5 sons. I eat them all that night, but I'm still hungry. My heart is burning with so much hunger that it is smoking. I get no water to drink. See the disaster that has happened to me." And the monk says, "What evil deed have you done by body, speech, or mind? What have you done so that you eat your own sons?" "My husband's wife was about to give birth." So here we see this is a woman, and she, in her previous life, was married to someone who also had another wife. So this is a tale of jealousy. "I was extremely jealous of her. With that evil mind, I gave her some medicine that would kill the unborn baby. The 2-month embryo flowed out just like blood. The baby's grandmother became very angry with me and called her relatives. She frightened me and made me swear an oath. I told a terrible lie, saying, if it was I who killed the baby, I will eat my own sons. And as a result of that evil deed and the lie I told, I have to eat my sons and be covered by their blood." So it's very, very intense story. And so there's some jealousy. So it's kind of like a wrongness of mind. And when you're jealous, you also covet things. You're not wanting other people to have things. So that's that kind of meanness, stinginess, which is also a feature of the hungry ghosts. And then there's the lie. And wrong speech is also something that is a feature of hungry ghosts. And so all of these stories have some relation to what's known as the 10 akusala dhammas. And these are the unwholesome, unskillful, evil actions that we can do. And they're unskillful actions, unskillful speech, unskillful thoughts. So mainly we see killing and speech in the Peta Vatthu. And then there's these unskillful thoughts which come from wrong view, such as covetousness, such as desiring more. And obviously this relates strongly to the hunger that hungry ghosts have. And ill will, or not liking others, reviling others, insulting them, and not wanting them to prosper, and those sorts of things, like in the story we just saw. And so this kind of ill will mixed with wrong view and stinginess, these are the unskillful thoughts that affect our karma and that are our karma that results in these bad actions. So the kind of simplicity of the karma that we see in the Peta Vatthu is illustrated in this slide, which is, of course, a cat who, cats eat fish. And so here we have a fish eating a cat. So this is kind of the way the karma is explained is very simplistic. It's kind of like, this is the action and this will be the result. And everyone, of course, has karma. And so this is the main purpose, of course, of these stories. I just had to include Oprah because everyone gets karma. We all have karma. And another meme explaining, I guess, for us in picture form, how this works. So we have ourself, which is the hand, and here we are doing bad karma in this life, bad, evil deeds of body, speech, and mind. And we're just pouring this onto our storehouse of bad karma that we've already accumulated. And so this is the kind of moralizing, the kind of ethical drive that lies behind these stories. They're visceral. They point out these things in order to make us think about what's going on, to make us understand the effects of these bad actions. So now I'm going to read a series of stories, and these are going to pick up these themes about killing, wrong speech, going to see some stinginess, and if we have time, some wrong livelihood. So I invite you to make yourselves comfortable and to maybe even close your eyes and relax if you can at these terrible stories. And I'll read, just checking the time, I'll read a few and we'll see how we go, and then we'll perhaps get to another aspect, which is how to avoid becoming such a creature. And so this story is about killing, and it's about a deer hunter. So here we have, I guess in the Buddhist sense, wrong livelihood, which is harming living beings or dealing in living beings, killing, and that wrong action of killing. And so here we have a man who, we're not sure who he is, but this person has seen a ghost. And he says, in a multi-story mansion, you, talking to the ghost, rest on a very comfortable couch, listening to the sweet music of instruments. But at the end of the night, before sunrise, you walk towards the cemetery where you experience very painful feelings. What evil deed have you committed by body, speech, or mind that makes you suffer like this? So here we have a ghost that's got some pleasure. He's able to listen to music, lives in a mansion, and then at night time suffers. So why is this? I was a hunter in the city of Rajagaha. I was very cruel and had no self-control. I had a very kind friend who was a lay follower of the Supreme Buddha. He felt pity for me and kept advising me again and again, saying, do not do bad deeds, my friend. Do not be reborn in a bad world. Some prefiguring there. If you wish to be reborn in a good world, then stop yourself from killing living beings. But the ghost continues, I did not listen to his advice because I took too much pleasure from killing and was foolish. So my friend, who felt sorry for me, advised me again, saying, if you have to kill living beings in the daytime, then please stop yourself from doing so at night. So I killed living beings during the daytime and stopped during the night. Because of this, I enjoy heavenly pleasures during the nighttime. Sorry, my mistake. I must have flipped those two, so that enjoys music during the day and, enjoys music during the night and during the day is tortured. And during the day, dogs come and eat me. So this is what happens to that poor ghost. Dogs come and eat him. So he becomes the hunted. Even though I restrained myself from killing at night, I still gained good results from that. Now I imagine the disciples of the Supreme Buddha who practice the Dharma diligently throughout their lives. And I imagine that they will surely attain the supreme bliss of nirvana. And the ghost comes to this view because he has experienced the results of his actions, so that he sees the truth that these things are the results of his karma. And that gives him faith in the Buddha's teaching. And so there is actually another verse, these two are linked, where the ghost has the opposite. So during the day, they experience suffering. During the night, they experience pleasure. And these two, vice versa. But this is designed to show perhaps that even restraining ourselves a little has an effect. So if we don't restrain ourselves, we'll experience day and night of suffering. But if we restrain ourselves even a part of the day, then we'll experience a reduction of that future potential suffering. And so this is why things like restraining ourselves through our own ethical conduct, maybe undertaking periods of precepts or retreats or observing the Apostata days, are powerful because they protect us from doing unwholesome deeds during that time. And this is a reduction from the potential that we might have had if we weren't restrained by our virtue in that way. So I'll just read the next one, which is actually from the Samyutta Nikaya, not the Peta Vatthu. I really like this one. And so again, we find Moggallana, who is the arahant who sees this ghost. And so previously we heard that the arahant Moggallana was like, well, you deserve to suffer. So here we see again, he's not very easygoing when it comes to these poor ghosts. So the arahant Moggallana was walking down the mountain and he stopped and smiled. And his friend says, why were you smiling? He says, oh, we're going for alms now. Let's talk about this later in the presence of the Buddha. And so then they're in the presence of the Buddha, and this monk says to him, why did you smile when you were coming down the mountain this morning? And Bhante Moggallana replies, this morning as I was coming down from the mountain, I saw a skeleton moving through the air. So this is one of the flying skeletons. And vultures, crows, and hawks were chasing after it. They were pecking between its ribs, stabbing it and tearing it apart. The poor skeleton was crying out in pain. And Moggallana thought to himself, it is indeed unusual, amazing, that there exists such a being and that there exists such a life. And this is the reason that he was smiling. And then the Blessed One, the Buddha, says to the monks, there are disciples who have gained the divine eye. So this is how the beings such as Bhante Moggallana or the Buddha are able to see these other beings. And these monks who gained the divine eye have special knowledge. They can know and witness such non-humans. In the past, says the Buddha, I too saw such a being, but I did not speak of it. If I had spoken about it, there might have been some people who wouldn't believe my words, and it would have led to their harm and suffering because they didn't believe my words for a long time. And the Blessed One continues saying, that non-human being, that ghost, used to be a cattle butcher in the city of Rajagaha, and it was a result of that bad karma that he was boiled in hell for many years, for many hundreds of years, for many thousands of years, for many hundreds of thousands of years. And as a remaining result of that same karma, he has been reborn as a ghost and is experiencing such pain. So this is the torment of hell, and being boiled for hundreds of thousands of years, and then a reduction of that suffering apparently is to be reborn as a hungry ghost, flying through the air and pecked at by birds. So that's a terrible story. Hopefully none of us will have that happen to us. And now I'll tell a story about the problems of wrong speech. And this is, again, one of my favorite stories. We have a monk named Narada who says, when he sees this ghost, your body is as beautiful as an angel and you're floating through the sky, but your mouth is being eaten by worms and is very smelly. What have you done in your previous life? So this is the ghost known as Stinky Mouth. And the ghost says, I was an evil monk and insulted others using bad words. I pretended to be a good monk. I did not control what I said to others. However, I did not do any evil actions with my body. Because of this, my body is beautiful, but my mouth is full of worms. You have seen this with your own eyes, Bhante. The wise and compassionate Buddhas have taught about wholesome things. I say the same to you. Never tell lies or break friendships with divisive speech. Then you will be reborn in heaven and enjoy every happiness you desire. So here we have again this very powerful statement, the ghost telling us, don't be reborn like me. This is what I did to be reborn in this way. And if you avoid doing those actions that I did and instead cultivate right speech, good speech, then you'll be reborn in a heavenly realm, in a good destination. And also we see again this reduction of suffering that comes from observing some aspects of ethical conduct. So that ghost, although its speech was really bad, it didn't do any bodily misconduct, such as killing or stealing or sexual misconduct. So it had a beautiful body, but an ugly mouth. So again, you see this very simplistic kind of karma. And of course, I do want to draw attention to this because who knows the workings of karma? And the Buddha himself said that trying to fathom the working of karma would drive people insane. It would make their heads split. And so we have to be a little bit cautious maybe with a very simplistic presentation of karma, because we know that there's other things that affect our future rebirth, such as environment and parents' genetics and all sorts of things. And I'm particularly cautious when we're talking about telling people that they're going to go to hell or be reborn as a hungry ghost, because religion historically has a bit of a bad role with telling certain groups that they're going to hell and so on. And we live in a pluralistic, multicultural, multi-faith society. And so we don't want to be the kind of people that kind of go around saying to other people, oh, you're going to go to hell if you do that, or you said bad words to me, you're going to have a mouthful of stinky worms in your future. Somehow it doesn't feel quite right, does it? But these stories are instructive Perhaps they're all true, perhaps they're all stories. And we just need to be a little bit sophisticated in how we kind of think about these things, how we interpret these. Someone recently wrote to me actually about reading about someone who was disabled, I think it was, and they had read or heard teachers talking about how if you're born disabled, then it's punishment for something you did in your past life. And somehow that seemed a little bit harsh and maybe a bit easy and convenient, maybe simplistic. Maybe it was just a result of genetics, or maybe it's difficult for us to make that kind of judgment. So although these are the kind of things we learn about in the suttas sometimes, or learn about in these stories, perhaps a word of caution about applying them too hastily without wisdom in our own lives, and especially when we're thinking about other beings. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm not being heretical or anything, but just a word of caution is all. And so another one about speech, which again is about, this very, very simplistic result of this karma. It's an exact mirror of the behavior. And it's called the backbiter. I wonder if you can tell what is going to happen to this poor person who becomes a ghost. So a monk called Narada Bhante sees a ghost and he says, "You're wearing many garlands. You're wearing a crown and other jewelry. Your body is covered in sandalwood cream. Your facial expression is very pleasant and your body shines brightly, just like the sun. You're surrounded by 10,000 divine maidens who serve and do whatever you want. They wear bracelets, they have crowns, and you look very mighty and majestic. When people look at you, they are stunned by your appearance, and their body hairs stand on end. But you eat the flesh of your own back." Don't you just love that segue? So we have this beautiful body and then this kind of questioning. But you eat the flesh from your own back. Remember, the name of this story is the backbiter. What evil action by body, speech, or mind made you eat your own flesh? And the ghost says, "Well, when I was living in the human world, I lied, I broke friendships, I used divisive words, I cheated others and did lots of cunning deeds. In the middle of large gatherings of people, when I was asked to tell the truth, I lied." And this is one of the definitions of wrong speech that we find in the suttas. When you are asked in front of a group of people to tell the truth, and if you lie, that is the very definition of wrong speech. "I insulted others behind their backs. As a result of speaking behind others' backs, I have to eat the flesh of my own back. You have seen how I am suffering, Bhante. Now see the truth of the words of the wise and compassionate Buddhas. I can tell you now, don't break friendships, don't tell lies, and may you not have to eat the flesh from your own back." So again, literally a backbiter becomes someone who has to eat their own flesh. So you can see the way these kind of narratives, like I say, are kind of quite simple. And we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip one story so that we get to this one, which is from the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's called "The Pot-like Testicles." So what could this be about? So again, this is with Moggallana Bhante, and he was coming down the mountain, he saw a ghost, and this ghost was moving through the air. And when he walked, he had to lift his testicles onto his shoulders. So his giant testicles. And when he sat down, he had to sit on top of his testicles. Vultures, crows, and hawks were chasing after this ghost, stabbing at it and tearing it apart. And the ghost was crying out of pain. I thought, it's unusual indeed that such a being exists and that there is such a life. And later on, of course, they're in the presence of the Blessed One, the Buddha. And again, the Buddha says, there's monks and beings who can see this using their divine eye, but people would not believe if they had not seen it for themselves. And he says, that non-human being used to be an evil judge, so someone who is corrupt and maybe obtains gains which were illicit. As a result of that bad karma, he was boiled in hell for hundreds of thousands of years, and then the remaining karma, he was reborn as a hungry ghost. And that is why he has these giant testicles being eaten by crows and hawks. So if that doesn't make you think twice, then I'm not sure what would. And so we're coming towards the end of our time, but I just want to go on to this next section, which is how to avoid becoming a hungry ghost. And so, obviously, as we've heard, bad conduct leads to bad results. And the reverse of that is also true. So instead of killing, we have non-killing, which is a skillful action, the same with non-stealing, and no sexual misconduct. And instead of divisive speech, lies, and things like that, we have skillful speech, where people are truthful and harmonious, and we have skillful thoughts, especially non-covetousness, that is not being greedy, not wanting, and non-ill will. And we have the development of right view. So all of these other beings had wrong view. They didn't see in accordance with the effects of karma. They didn't understand. They thought that they could do these actions and that there wouldn't be a result. But this is wrong view. Right view is understanding that our bodily actions, our speech, and our thoughts have some sort of result. And of course, also, it's right view is things like making sacrifices, offering dana. So this idea, one of the definitions of right view is there is value, there is meaning in sacrifice and giving. And so this is a key that we have through the Peta Vatthu, this kind of key of right view that the Buddha offers us into how we can make sure we escape a woeful destination. And that is by giving, by being kind and generous. And this is one of the most important ways that we can not become a ghost, because what we're doing is making merit. So when we make merit, what we're doing is generating a whole heap of positive karma, which of course has positive results. And it's like a storehouse of good actions and good results, which protects us. And many of you will be familiar with this idea that a single act of merit making has a boundless potential, boundless results. It's like the Buddha regarded as in the same way that when we talk about the ocean, we say there's a lot of water in the ocean. We don't measure it. You can't say there's this many liters. We say there's a lot. There's a lot of water. And in the same way, we can't measure the effect of our merit making, it's immeasurable, the results of this practice. And so this protects us. Every time we make merit, it protects us. And this is why it became such an important facet of so many different Buddhist cultures, this idea that we can make merit, which is a way to protect our future interests in our future lives. We see this, sometimes people might have this idea, perhaps a little bit wrong, in that they think they can keep on doing unwholesome, unskillful, ethical misconduct. And if they just make a few acts of merit, it might make up for it. And maybe there's some truth to this, but it's much better, of course, much better than only making merit, is to stop unwholesome actions and to come out of evil actions, unskillful actions, and to cultivate wholesome actions, wholesome ethical conduct. And then the merit that we make on top of that is, of course, a bonus. So the main way that we can practice merit making, so I appreciate, just as an aside, that many people perhaps who don't come from a traditional Buddhist background, maybe who have come through secular Buddhism or through meditation cultures, the practice of merit might not be present in your cultural experience of Buddhism, but it's a really important part of most Buddhist cultures. And the way we see it most often is through the practice of generosity, such as offering food and requisites, especially to the field of merit, which is the Arya Sangha, or to the Sangha generally. We can also practice merit through generosity, such as giving to charity. And when we do practice such generosity, remember to rejoice in your own generosity and the generosity of others. So this is something that we do when we recite the Anumodana. Often this is called the blessing that the monks and nuns do when someone has made an offering to the Sangha, such as a meal or offered a robe. We chant the Anumodana, which is the rejoicing. And this rejoicing reminds us of the power of our good qualities. Some of the Anumodana chants that we chant talk about how our merit overflows. Just as when we pour water from one vessel to the other, it overflows. And this is that kind of multiplication of merit. When we rejoice in other people's merit making, we get more merit ourselves. When we share our merit and dedicate our merit, then our merit is not reduced by that. We multiply our merit and amplify it throughout the world. So this is the power of generosity. And so rejoicing and dedicating merit are also acts of generosity. And of course, as I said, we need to practice ethical conduct, keeping the 5 precepts, not doing any harm for ourselves or others. And also to do things like offering service to teachers, to parents, and just generally being a good person. This is how we can make merit. And it's good to do this consciously, to remind ourselves, I'm doing this because it's good for me, it's good for others. And this kind of conduct can really brighten the mind. And when you're doing volunteering or service, you feel good about yourself. And so this is that kind of coming into contact with the wholesome, coming into contact with the good. And that's what merit is. We don't feel bad about doing these things. When we're being a good person, we feel good. This itself is a cause for celebration. We're more likely to do more good. And when we feel good, we're kinder, we're happier, and we treat other people well. And so that's something which is a treasure. But then we also need to practice mental development, citta bhavana. So we need to listen to the Dhamma. We can recite the Dhamma, share the Dhamma. I know in Japan and China, and also in other cultural contexts, sharing the Dhamma, which Dhamma dana, is regarded as a really important way of making merit. And so that's why you see all these free distribution Dhamma books around the place. And in ancient Japan, people used to copy the verses from the suttas. And this act of copying the Dharma was regarded as a way of making merit. And of course, that became printing presses and things like that, and distribution of Dharma, distribution of prayer flags, that sort of thing. So sharing the Dharma is an act of mental development and an act of merit, along with meditation and, of course, the development of wisdom. This is all wholesome and all ways of making merit. So all of these things are sources of merit. We can also do things, as I suggested before, like observing Uposatha days, where we deliberately practice wholesome actions all day long. We make this strong effort in our practice. And when we undertake retreats, we're not doing any bad actions, we're not killing or stealing or committing sexual misconduct, and we're leading a simple life of contentment and mental development, then we're doing good. That's why we always feel so good when we come off retreat. We've been making lots of merit. And we also see things like certain rituals that might make merit, such as even just things like offering a flower to a Buddha statue, or bowing down 3 times, or making anjali, or going on a pilgrimage to see the sacred sites of Buddhism, or doing a circumambulation around a stupa. These are all types of merit making. And there's also another one which became very popular in ancient China and is still popular today, which is releasing life. And so you see people buying lobsters or fish or birds that have been in captivity and releasing them. And this is an act of kindness, of generosity, giving these creatures freedom. But of course, we have to do this with wisdom, because very often, unfortunately, these beings have been put in those circumstances especially for this. So they've kind of been, there's like an industry or a culture where these birds and other animals are incarcerated deliberately in order to be released. And I remember when I was in Myanmar, going to a monastery and doing this, releasing life, releasing some birds that were captured, and sitting down in the monastery, perhaps sitting down too long, maybe longer than most people bother to, and long enough to see the birds go back to the cage, which they had been in before, and working out for myself that, this is a bit of a scam. And also with releasing life, you have to be very careful, because often people are releasing creatures into environments which are inhospitable for them, or which they are going to be detrimental to. So releasing koi carp into the river systems in Australia, for example, has become a big problem. And there are government regulations about releasing certain animals into certain ecosystems. And this is one area where the Buddhists often get into trouble with various governments. So you need to do this kind of thing with wisdom and environmental awareness. So the Peta Vatthu also tells us how to avoid becoming a hungry ghost, and shows us ways that we can develop merit in order to avoid these bad destinations. And so I'll read this one to you now, which is called Without Rippling. So there's a minister named Kolya, and this minister is taking a boat ride down the Ganges, and he sees a ghost. So again, here we see a layperson who gets to see one of these ghosts. "Hey, ghost," says Kolya, "you move through the river Ganges without creating any ripples in the water. Even though you are naked, you're wearing flowers and garlands, and you don't look like a ghost. But where do you live, and where are you going?" And the ghost says, "I'm going to the village of Chundatika, located between Vasabha and Benares. With the intention to help the ghost, this minister Collier donates some food and some clothes to a barber in the city, a barber who was on the ship, and shared the merit with the ghost. So here we see this desire to help the hungry ghost, to be compassionate, to be kind, and can't give directly to the ghost because it's a ghost. So how do you be kind? How can you help this ghost? Through the act of dedicating the merit of a good action. So that good action that this minister does is to give something to a fellow passenger, a barber. It's probably worth noting that the barbers in ancient cultures perhaps were considered of a lower caste. There might have been a lower rung of society. And so this is an act of kindness towards a person who is less well off than the donator. So he gives some food and clothes to that barber and shared the merit of that action with the ghost. And immediately after that donation, the ghost received fine clothes and jewelry, wearing garlands and flowers, and benefited from that donation of merit. Therefore, we're instructed people should share the merits with their departed relatives repeatedly. And the ghosts go on to say, we were evil housewives, we were evil people in our past lives. We had so much food to drink, but we never shared. We were very lazy. We had no desire to collect merit. We spent all our time eating and only enjoyed luxuries. Even when we did give a very small amount of food, we would insult the receiver while we gave it. And now they're suffering. They have great hardship. And they know that they'll be reborn when they get reborn as humans in low jobs like basket makers or chariot makers doing inferior kinds of work. And those who are going to be good, they will be reborn in heaven and they'll experience pleasures. But there's no happiness for those who are selfish in the past or in the future. And again, the ghosts warn us to give generously to avoid such a bad destination. And so this is how we can transform not only our minds, but also perhaps help these other beings. And it's worth noting that there's some controversy about this practice of dedicating merit. How does it work? If we have this doctrine of karma, how is it that other beings can benefit from our kindness? So the dedication of merit, which is a huge practice we see every day in a monastery where people come to visit, we see people pouring water to share with their deceased relatives. And we see people making donations and all sorts of things to help their deceased relatives. So how does it happen? How do we do it? So just like that person on the boat, you dedicate mentally this merit of your actions. So there's a desire to amplify, to magnify a good action. And we see this often. We see people saying, I'm doing this for my deceased relatives. We even say for all living beings. But who can receive this merit? So as I've said here, it's only really for the hungry ghosts, because other living beings cannot receive that merit. Take, for example, beings in very high states, such as in those immaterial realms. They can't even hear the Dhamma there. They are so pure of mind, they don't even have ears to hear. And other devas, well, they don't need the merit. They've already got good results. And low beings, like those hell beings, they're incapable of receiving this merit. And humans, well, just like those hell beings, they're attached to their own karma results. So how do we reconcile this kind of seemingly contradictory idea of karma and merit? So it is a bit of a controversy, and other scholar monks will be much better at explaining it than I can. But the orthodox view, the view that's usually given, is that the ghosts are able to rejoice in our kindness. And if you remember, rejoicing is an act of making merit in itself. So by rejoicing at the kindness that we show, they get a little bit happy and they think, oh, this person is kind. This person wants to help me. And it makes them feel a little bit happy, makes them feel like they're cared for, makes them rejoice in our actions, which therefore is making merit for them, which helps them eventually to come out of their suffering. So there's some ideas perhaps that the act of merit making was an older form of maybe some ideas that existed before Buddhism, and also became a huge feature of the Mahayana schools as well. But it's important to note, as I said before, your own merit is not diminished by sharing. So the way we think about this, of course, is like a candle that can light many lamps without going out itself. So this is merit making and the act of dedicating our merit. And so as we finish up this session today, thinking about the good actions that we've done, been here, we've heard some Dharma, we've thought about what actions are skillful, what actions are unskillful. We've perhaps reflected upon our own conduct. We're straightening our view, coming towards right view. And this is how we generate merit. And so we can all dedicate the merit of our practice today, thinking how wholesome it is for ourselves to have the Dharma, to understand the Dharma, and to think about these other beings, to extend some kindness, compassion, whatever good qualities we have generated throughout our life. May I share these good qualities with others, and may those beings able to receive this merit benefit from all the good actions, all the good thoughts, all the good speech that I have done. May we share our merit with all those living beings. May they come out of their suffering, and may they learn wisdom and attain nibbana. And so that's the end of the talk. We have some time, perhaps, for those who are lingering around, for some questions, if you have. So if you'd like to, you can unmute or you can ask a question in the chat. I see there's lots of things happening in the chat. Some nice comments. It's very good. Thank you for those nice comments. And if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate. Now is the time. Thank you also to those people who complimented the effort that had gone into the display of the cemetery here at Lekanta Vihara. And so what I'll do now is I'll stop the recording and I'll stick around for a bit. So if you have any questions, then you can feel free to ask.